Hello, welcome back to 340 Paddler, and today I want to talk about an issue that is close to many of our hearts, or the other end. Seating. Now, I've dealt with seating once, but I want to deal with it in a little more detail, discuss it a little bit further here. Now, of course, we all have different setups. You will see canoes like this, you will see kayaks with all sorts of setups. I want to go through some of the basics, and I want to remind you that if your seat isn't comfortable for 63 miles of freedom, or the 60 miles of the Howler, or whatever your long day has been, then it's definitely not going to be comfortable when you're doing 5 or 10 times further on the 340, and someone in discomfort is not going to do well. So we're going to start with the basics. We're going to start with foam. Of course, we see a lot of foam seats. This is a custom seat. I'll touch on that in a little bit. But we see these different foam seats, and they can work out fairly well, but they tend to be fairly stiff. They're intended for someone who's going 10 or 15 miles, who's paddling for 3 to 4 hours. The advantage of foam is, of course, I can reshape it. I can change it as necessary, even on the river. My first year, I used a seat identical to this. This is one of the seats available through Chesapeake Lightcraft. It just drops into your boat. And I actually cut a hole for my tailbone at Glasgow. So there is an advantage to these. They also tend to be the least expensive. Now there's another version for surf skis, but this can be modified or used for a kayak as well. In fact, I've done that. There's a epic version. You can get these through Ron Ladd Surf Ski, and elsewhere. And the advantage here is it's got the holes for the sit bones, and it's got a cutout for the tailbone. These come with some Velcro underneath, and oftentimes you'll see people stack these. My favorite setup for these in a V10 Sport was to use one Moki seat and 2 squish pads, which we'll get to in a minute. Then we have gel seats. Now, gel seats sound like a brilliant idea. In fact, for a short run, they are awesome. Because, of course, you're sitting in the gel moves, it molds to your body, in theory. And one of the more popular ones is a squish pad. It costs about $20, $30, somewhere in there. So they're fairly inexpensive. Oftentimes people will use a couple of them, and you can actually play with it. So if you put the yellow sides together, then you can actually rotate a little bit on it. The disadvantage is, of course, as you get further and further in the race, the gel kind of holds its shape, which means you might not be sitting on much of anything in terms of padding, which is why people put this on top of a foam seat oftentimes. Then we have purple. If you've been on social media, you can't ignore this stuff. Their ads are irritating, but in the name of science, I went out and bought one. And what I bought is similar to this, so they have some lightweight pads, and mine folds up. It looks more like a butt, I guess, than this, but the advantage is it is comfortable, brilliantly comfortable. The disadvantage is if you are tippy in your boat, you'll be tippier because you no longer have contact with the boat. So the boat can move a certain amount under you without you moving. This can cause a problem if you happen to be in a boat that's a little less stable. If you're in a very stable boat, then this is a great idea. And the smallest pad costs about $35. They go up to 50 or 100. You want to get a small pad because the large ones they use for chairs and such weigh a ton. They're like 5 pounds. So you want to watch that weight. Then we have the air seats. These are brilliant, but they are also expensive. You will find them by Airhawk, which are for motorcycles, or Roho, R-O-H-O, which are for wheelchairs. It's actually the same company and the same technology. They're simply shaping them differently, but they're made up of individual air cells, and these are great seats. They also cost between $80 and $100 and some odd, $120 or so. So they can be very expensive. There is a cheaper version. This is sort of an illustration. But there are cheaper versions you find at kayak shops that look like the little inflatable Thermarest. And those are okay. Anytime you're using an air pad, you need to make sure that you're in a stable boat, because again, the air will separate you from the boat. The other trick to an air pad is you do not use it fully inflated. What you actually will do is you will sit in the boat and you try to inflate it or deflate it to the point where you're just above, where it's just supporting you off the seat. You don't want to be 2 inches above the seat. You're going to be really unstable at that point. Then we have custom seats, and I want to let you in on a little secret. A lot of people make their own seats, and they aren't that expensive. So this is Ryan Milby putting together a seat. He is one of the masters of the custom seat. And here's the steps. Basically, you're going to get foam beads. You can go to your local thrift store and grab some stuffed animals that someone donated from a carnival that are full of these foam beads. Do not get the plastic beads. Those will hurt. You want the foam. Then you get an 8-ounce bottle of Gorilla Glue. And you're going to put the foam beads and the Gorilla Glue into a bag. You're going to add the Gorilla Glue, probably most of that bottle. And then you're going to go ahead and add about a cup of water, because Gorilla Glue requires water to set up. Then you're going to close off the bag, mix it up thoroughly. It's going to take a couple of minutes. Make sure you get in the corners so everything is good and soaked with Gorilla Glue and water. Then you're going to set up in the boat like you see in the center there, and then you're going to sit on it. Ryan recommends 15 minutes. I recommend 25, but I'm a little more cautious about things. But he's probably right. 15 will probably be plenty. You're going to feel it heat up. It won't heat up to the point of burns, but it will heat up thoroughly. You know it's set up when you push on any part of it, and instead of the beads and such moving, they bounce back against you. And then you get up and you leave. And that's it. In about an hour or two, you can take the bag off and you can shape the seat a little bit more. Couple of notes: when you do this, the boat has to be level. That's why he's sitting there staring at a level. Because if you're leaning to one side, you'll have an asymmetrical seat. Also, a lot of people use this as a base and then they can add things to it. So you can put more on top of it if need be. When you get on that seat, when you sit on it the first time, make sure you sit level. You're sitting back in the proper paddling position for your boat, and make sure that you squish around a little bit on the sit bones so that you're creating a good shape and indentation. You can also do the same thing with mini cell foam, although in this case you actually have to go to the effort of grinding it out. Now, there are other people, Doug Robinette, who will go ahead and do something like this. Actually, his wife does it. It's amazing. She's memorized the shape of his butt. So she will go ahead and carve that out for him. But this takes a little bit of effort. This takes, some people are intimidated by it because you're trying to shape something out of nothing. They're worried about destroying the foam. Honestly, it's not too terribly difficult, but it is a little more difficult than the beanbag method. Then there are other options. Of course, people add to the seats, and that's what I'm dealing with here. First of all, one of the most popular things to do is take whatever seat you have and add a couple of layers to it. The most common materials that we tend to see are yoga mats. You cut them up so that they're the shape of your boat seat, and a couple of layers will help. You can cut a couple of holes for your sit bones. It will create a comfortable seat. Thermarest pads, the solid ones with this texture, they're fairly cheap. You can usually get them for about $20-$30, give or take. On Walmart, you have enough material to create seats forever. Or you can use these exercise pads, which are about 1/2 inch or more thick. They're very soft, very squishy. Those can work quite well as well. Although with these, just a note, on a couple of long runs, I've noticed that they keep the indentation, whatever indentation I've left in them, over the span of maybe 6 hours. So you might want to cut multiple layers and then have it set up so that you can just swap out the layers as needed. Ultimately, we are looking for a happy bum. If you have a happy bum, you will have a happy race. This is 340 Paddler. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, quarrels, qualms, quandaries, curse words, please leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, this is 340 Paddler, hoping that you keep your paddle in the water.